This time I'll try to be shorter and less boring compared to the morning because we already discussed some of the issues. But actually when I heard the title, Modern Threats to Religious Liberty, I also thought, what is specific about the modern age? And interestingly, there is something specifically modern about some of the so-called Islamic authoritarianisms that we are seeing today. Why? Here's this thing. For example, you said in this country, now there's a law which says you have to be Shafi. Such a law is possible because we are living in a modern age. And here's a modern state which controls a certain territory, has the power and the authority to impose a common law to all of the territory, centralized education system, centralized source of information, legal system, and so on and so forth. This modern state is actually a new reality in human history. When you go back to 4 centuries ago, you would see that the states had less authority, less control over society. Why? First of all, there was no technology. I mean, today the state really interferes in our lives in every aspect because the state can. The state has a big bureaucracy, paid everywhere, policemen, media is everywhere, and thanks to media, the state can disseminate information, collect information. With internet, we are being monitored every moment. So the modern state is much more powerful than other states. Now, if you combine this modern state with your specific understanding of any religion or ideology, you create a very authoritarian mechanism. Even more authoritarianism than what was the case in pre-modern era, even if the tradition itself has some illiberal elements. Therefore, I think Islamist authoritarianism is more authoritarian than some of the authoritarian aspects of our traditional interpretations of religion. And the interesting thing is that this is happening at a time when actually everybody's asking for more freedom. I mean, we're at a time that individuals generally demand more freedom because they're more educated, they're more informed about the world, they can make their opinions. But authoritarian governments have turned even more authoritarian to curb that tendency. So here's a clash. Another problem is that, especially for the Muslim world in the modern age, is that in the past 2 centuries, the Islamic world became very defensive against the West and against non-Muslim civilizations. Why? Well, there's an understandable reason, because we were attacked or colonized or dominated by the West. When actually in my book I explain that how the Western colonialism and Western domination killed liberalism in the Muslim world in the 19th century, because when you see there's a powerful enemy out there, defending yourself against the enemy becomes more important than allowing freedom of speech, different ideas, and so on and so forth. So in a sense, the Western domination made Muslims more defensive, and it's understandable. But this is a trap at the same time, because the more you become defensive and not allow free discussion and pluralism in yourself, you cannot have the tools to change yourself and look at yourself from a critical point of view. Here's this vicious cycle. For example, when we discuss issues about the Muslim world, here's an example what illustrates my point. It was in a conference in Turkey several years ago, and I was speaking to a Turkish Muslim audience saying that we Muslims need more self-criticism. We need to be more critical about our cultural tendencies. We need more criticism against our own government so we can change. And one of the people at the audience at the Q&A session said, "What criticism are you talking about? The only problem we have is Western colonialism. They have dominated our world. They have occupied Iraq. They have done this. They have created Israel in the middle of the Islamic world. They're supporting it." And he said everything about the Western world. The thing is, he was right to a great extent in the sense that, yes, Islamic world has faced all these troubles. But I ask him, okay, how change will happen? When you condemn the West, will the West listen to you and change their attitudes towards us? Saying that, oh, some Muslims are condemning us, we should change our attitudes. The West will not change what it's doing to you. You can only change yourself. You can only change your reactions, you can only change your policies, you can only change your input into the world. And to change that, you have to rethink about yourself. You have to bring diversity, you have to bring openness, you need some new ideas. Therefore, I think this anti-imperialist defensive rhetoric doesn't help us that much, although we are generally right to complain about anti-imperialism. Whatever you do, Israel will not change its policies probably. You can try to influence it with different means, but how do we have a better policy for Palestinians, or how the Palestinians can have a better strategy, is a question that we need to discuss. So this constant condemnation or complaint from Western imperialism, which is generally rightful, doesn't solve our problems, and sometimes it becomes a cover of not looking at ourselves more critically. And we should not forget that if the West developed so fast and so powerfully in the past 5 centuries, how this was possible? Because they have an internal debate in themselves. Because the freedom, free discussion, criticism allowed the West to develop these new ideas. When you read a Western newspaper, New York Times, Washington Post, whatever, you see that they criticize the American government very harshly. Does this make the American government weaker? No, I mean, that's a very powerful country in the world. That free discussion, the criticism of the government inside, made the country generally stronger because policies could change thanks to those discussions. If we lack the same thing, everything will be more stagnant and we will not have tools for change. So these are some of the modern problems, but when it comes to specific issues of religious liberty, what are we being threatened with? In the Muslim world today, there is a big trend to teach and impose on fellow Muslims the real Islam. For example, especially Wahhabi, Salafi friends of ours, they will come and tell other Muslims, what you're doing is wrong. You're not following real Islam. This is how real Islam should be. And they impose on that to you sometimes. The question is, how do they know what real Islam is? You can believe that this is the real interpretation of Islam and follow that, but once you impose on others, you are actually doing something which is a little bit arrogant. You're saying, I know what real Islam is, and I'm imposing on this. And you are very righteous and very, godly when you're doing that, but actually you are venerating yourself because you're saying, I have ultimate access to truth. And for worse, some of the very hardcore Salafi groups, they also even take the takfiri line and say, other Muslims who do not follow our way are kafirs, they're unbelievers. They will excommunicate other Muslims and even in some cases, kill them. Use violence, because when you say somebody's kafir, it's also followed by the fiqh, rule that apostates should be killed. So if someone calls a kafir, then the person also can kill you. And this happens. This is happening in Syria right now, for example. Now this takfiri, which in other words, excommunicative, like saying that you're not a Muslim approach, is a very big danger for the Muslim world. This is, of course, something which is not totally new and modern. This has roots in our own history. And therefore, I would like to go back to a particular era in Islamic history and explain how this issue of takfir, excommunicating other Muslims, worked out then. And what was the reaction to this? Probably you all know that what was the big first division and civil war in Islam? The civil war between first Ali and Aisha, radiallahu anhu both. Later, Hazrat Ali, radiallahu anhu, and Muawiyah, the caliph fifth caliph and the ruler of Syria. When this big war between Ali and Muawiyah took place in the Siffin war, the Siffin battle, this is the beginning of many divisions in Islam, which still keeps continuing, which still keeps haunting us. Some followers of Ali gradually turned into Shiites. They revered Hazrat Ali to some extent, which is different from the Sunni line. Some followers of Ali and the followers of Muawiyah gradually, became the Sunni tradition. And from that war began the Sunni-Shiite split, which is still haunting the Islamic world. There was a third group in the face of Siffin, which was the first terrorist movement in Islamic history. They were the most fanatic group. These people are called the Khawarij, the dissenters, Hariji in Turkish, and Khawarij, Harijites, or you can translate it in English. These came out of the followers of Ali, but then they condemned Ali as well. And they said, both Ali and Muawiyah, in their claim for caliphate, they have both gone wrong. They're both misguided. And by choosing a referee on who will become the caliph, they have both denied God's judgment. So they said both Ali and Muawiyah have become infidels. They're kafirs. And their followers have become kafirs too. So they basically said, today what we'll call Sunni and Shia, both of them kafir. Who are not the only ones who are not kafir unbelievers? Themselves, of course. They're the good Muslims, the Kharijis. And some Kharijis were so violent that they started to launch wars against fellow Muslims, the followers of Ali or Muawiyah, saying that you are the kafirs and you are apostates and we should kill you because you are harming religion and so on and so forth. This is ultimate fanaticism. I mean, Christians had examples of this, Khawarij fanaticism. It was a marginal group. Now today, some groups in Syria or elsewhere who kill fellow Muslims for their belief is similar. But this is the fanatic path, right? And also it's an arrogant path. Don't forget that. Because when you say, I am the only good Muslim, our branch is the only good Islam. Are you praising Islam? Are you praising God? No, you're praising yourself. You're saying, we are the best and everybody's doomed. It's an arrogant approach. In the face of this, there was an opposition movement to the Khawarij fanaticism. This was the movement called Murji'ites. Murji'ites in Arabic means postponers. Do you know why they were called postponers? Well, the long story is in my book, and you can take a look at that, but I'll give you a short summary. They were called postponers because they gave a very interesting answer to this, whether Ali is right or Muawiyah is right or others are right. They said, we don't know. We cannot judge. Only Allah can judge people. So let's postpone this who's right and wrong debate to afterlife, to Akhirat, to be solved by God. Let's just do what we do. Everybody can follow what they want, but nobody can say fellow Muslims can punish each other. Let's give this to Allah. Allah knows, we don't know. Let's postpone this idea. That's why they're called Murji'ites. They refer to a verse in the Quran which says, it is Allah who will decide between you on the things you have disagreed on this world in afterlife. Now, do you know who also developed the same idea, the postponing idea, and became a very important figure in world history? John Locke, the founder of British liberalism. In his famous book, A Letter Concerning Toleration, John Locke, British liberal philosopher, who created all these ideas of individual rights, tolerance, diversity, pluralism that we're speaking today in the Western parlance. He says, I quote that chapter in my part in my book, there are many churches in England at the time. At this time in England, there were Puritans, were the Church of England, and Catholics that were killing each other. And John Locke said, you all kill each other saying, we are the right Christians, right? How do you know? Only the Almighty, the God knows. Let the Almighty decide this, and just do what you do and tolerate each other. And those ideas became the basis of liberalism in the Western tradition. Now, the Murji'ites said the same thing 1,000 years ago. And Abu Hanifa was a follower of that, for example, tradition, the founder of the Hanafi school. We have such roots in our religion, in our religious tradition, in our Islamic mode of thinking, which is a basis for us today to create diversity, pluralism, respect, tolerance, understanding. But we have Harijites kind of people too, and they have multiplied in the past couple of decades because of the political crises that we are going through. And therefore, to stand against those people, we don't need secularization of the debate. I mean, in the sense that we don't need to disrespect religious sources. We just should understand that we should be modest in our understanding of those sources. And we have the right to say, this is the religious school that I'm persuaded with. This is the imam that I really like and enjoy and his ideas inspire me. Or I read the Quran and I understand it for myself. But we don't have the right to excommunicate other Muslims, or we don't have the right to impose our understanding on them. When we do that, we are not venerating Islam. We are venerating ourselves, because we say, I'm best, and you're not. So I think that religious aspect should be underlined. Another thing, states and their nationhood. As I understand, in Malaysia, the constitution says every Malay is a Muslim, right? In the pre-modern era, there were no constitutions. So your nation would not be defined based on your religion in the pre-modern era. Constitutions are made generally to limit the state and create these individual rights. But if you turn constitutions into documents that enforce a certain religious identity on a people, then I think that goes against the whole idea of constitution as it developed in the West. I myself should say one thing. Every Turk I know is a Muslim. Probably there are no non-Muslim Turks in the world, in the sense that we have Christians in Turkey and we don't call them Turks, they're Armenian or Greeks. There are some few Protestant Turks. So in this sense, Turkish identity and Islam identity are very interwoven. Unlike the Arab identity, you can be an Arab Christian, but there are no Turkish Christian communities really. There are some very few Protestant converts in Turkey today, so they're really ethnically 100% Turk, but they're considered as, anathema by the rest of society, a very small group. So in the public consciousness, being a Turk equals being a Muslim. That's why, for example, I have a friend, Ziya Meral, who's a good friend of mine. He's a Turkish convert to Christianity. He became a Protestant Christian. And his family is so secular, they were not interested about Islam, but they were shocked that he became a Christian. They said, you became an American or a British. He said, no, I'm Turk still, but I became a Christian. So in that sense, Turkish identity and Islam are so interwoven. But I must say, I don't want to be a Muslim because I am a Turk. I want to be a Muslim because I believe in Allah and the Quran. Not because I happen to be born in the Republic of Turkey in the 20th century. So national identities are inevitably somehow connected with different religious beliefs. But if we freeze that and if we express this national identity and religious belief as the same thing, we risk losing the meaning of religion. There are Turks who are atheists. I mean, they're not Muslim, obviously. So if you think that if we think that Islam exists there to preserve that national identity, we are also changing the meaning and the intention of religion. Religion is mostly about connecting us to our Creator, and also a community as well. But if you lose that connection, a lot of problems happen. We start to impose it, we start to build communities around it, oppressive communities. So I think the threat in our day and age today is to lose that divine connection, which is the core of religion, and make religion a part of a political agenda, a nationalist agenda, and also sometimes a sectarian agenda to impose ourselves on others. This is what comes to my mind, really, when we speak about modern trusted religious liberty. I believe that Muslims have the right to be Muslims in the way they want, follow the religious schools, Shafi, Hanafi, Sunni, Shia. They're all Muslims. We shouldn't say, oh, we are the Muslims, they don't count. Everybody who accepts the Shahada and says the Quran is a revelation and Prophet Muhammad is God's prophet, that's a Muslim, period. Whether that person is Jafari, Hanafi, Shafi, Maliki, these are all, or nothing, just, no mazhab maybe. These are all, in my view, legitimate views. Only Allah knows which one is the best one. And if we follow any of these with our best intentions, probably Allah will judge us according to those best intentions. Thank you.